17 ways to buy a business that makes you 10 grand a month, zero down without loans. That's a good title, right? 10 grand a month. 17 ways to buy a business that makes you 10 grand a month. That's good. Zero down, ... and without loans. That's good. Okay, let's get into it. Bad ways to buy businesses, zero down. We've talked about this before. I should point out, by the way, some people have pointed this out. First of all, are we recording? This is the #1 channel for Indiana real estate, Big RIA. You also want to go to Big RIA. We're building the world's largest organization of special needs business owners and real estate investors. And as far as business owning, this is how we do it. Bad ways to buy businesses, zero down. 100% financing. These are ways not to do it, but these are included in our, these part of the 17, because you can do all this zero down. But this is what, if you go to any business building workshop or any like a biz buy sell thing or something, they're going to present this to you and they're going to, as if it's like a big secret. Don't do any of these things. So #1, 100% financing. We never don't do that. 110% financing, where you over leverage and get cash out at closing. 3 is seller financing. Find a seller that's, this is same thing as real estate, right? #4 is seller finance down payment. That's the big problem people have, is a down payment. Anytime you finance that, it just raises your debt service and it takes your earnings, lowers your earnings that you're going to make. #5 is accounts receivable. This is a big secret that's been going around for a long time, and some people haven't heard of it. And when they hear about it, they're like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So you could take money that the business is owed, leverage that. You can also take right? So 6, inventory on hand that they have, use that as leverage too. 7 is investor partner equity. If you do that 7, you can do any of these zero down. You can do any of the other ones zero down. I don't recommend doing any of these things. The reasons people run into businesses or run into problems with their business is because they get over leveraged. People think that cash is going to solve everything. It's not going to solve anything. It's really, you have to have the fundamental of I'm assuming that you're getting started, or you're a small business owner. For all of us, where you're getting started with small businesses, that the key is not to be capitalized or have too much capital, because that in many cases can be a problem. And by the way, that's what I meant to point out earlier. Some people pointed out my skin stuff is acting up. Got this like interesting, if you don't know my story, I've got this interesting combination of like psoriasis and seborrheic dermatitis and eczema, and so it gets on my, this is like the best. It takes a lot of work to look like this, so that's why I'm covered up sometimes. I wear all crazy shit, and that's why sometimes there's like bleeding and stuff like that. So it's not right now, but like anyway, I'm pointing that out because that's why I was wearing the glasses earlier for the previous one. Was that even on the recording? Okay. All right. Here's the smart ways to buy businesses. All right. So forget those 7. Here's what you want to focus on. #1, you go and grow the business and get a percentage of the growth. #2, you grow and get a percentage of the whole business. #3, we're going to get into each one more. Grow and assign the option. 4, use growth as your leverage to buy. 5, start a new business that grows companies. 6 is combine companies. 7, license a model. 8, have a third company that owns 2 others, or owns the 2 in between. So you have an A company and a B company, and C company owns a piece of each of them. 9, consulting company that helps others. 10, trade previous equity. 11, group equity, and 12, JSON Equity. All right, so that's 17. Yeah, but we want to put less than 17 that's why I asked that, because if it's like 17, we put 15 and then put like 2 bonus ones or whatever, right? No, it's good. I'm just saying in the future. Okay, so again, we don't use these top ones, right? We don't go over the 7. We don't make this happen. Was that a question? No. Okay, so this is important. We don't do this stuff. We don't go and find these investor partner deals or anything like that, or syndications, none of that stuff. And we don't want to ever go into these deals and like finance and over leverage what you have going on, because it just creates a lot of problems, and it just is not the way to go. This is all about growth. You work with companies and small businesses. All right, so the main thing we talk about, this is the whole process of everything we do. You work with companies and small businesses. So we start with usually 5 to 10 million and less than 10, 15, 20 employees, people where you could talk to the business owner, usually 5, 10, 15, 20 million or less. And this is generally with beneath the 5 million, you're going to have a lot of range in the earnings, right? Because the earnings, what the business actually makes versus what the owner gets, all their perks and the SDI or SDE, the earnings and income, the sellers, we've talked about this before, sellers discretionary earnings, income, NOI, how to calculate that stuff, cap rates. So if you're familiar, if you're not, if this is your first time, you want to go to our class. I already mentioned the #1 channel in real estate, special needs business owners, all that stuff. You want to go, my friends and I have invented all these methods of buying and selling companies, real estate, and models and stuff, all zero down without any risk, loans, credit, banks or anything. And I have a class on apartments, how to buy apartment buildings, and we talk about cap rates and how to change cap rates. Basically, a business's or any asset's value is determined by the income. 2 things. So if we want to pick a business, we can determine how much that business is worth if we know the income and if we know the multiplier. So the income, if it's making $500,000 a year, and then we need to know what the multiplier is. How many times in that industry, and that's in that niche, with that SIC, Standard Industrial Classification Code, you can look up like hair salon SIC codes or hair salon whatever, and you can find a list of what the average multiplier is. So for a hair salon, it's probably going to be like less than one, meaning if it makes 100,000, they'll probably pay like 70,000, 90,000 to buy that business. And those are the two things you need. You know the income of that business, and you know what's the multiplier. How many times that income are people paying for businesses like that? Make sense? Yeah. Okay. So that's why this is important. All we're doing, all of our plays here, how we buy our companies, how we buy our assets, how we pick these up, we have to grow them, right? We're growing. I keep thinking of you're raising your, no? Okay. So we're constantly growing the value by raising the income. And that's how we leverage, whether it's with real estate or anything else. But with real estate, you have a lot, the possibilities, the options you have are limited. But anytime we grow the value of anytime we grow the income of a business, we grow the value. Then we use that enhanced value as leverage to acquire. So anytime you grow income, you grow value. We grow the value and then we use that as leverage. We fill all three money buckets: money now, money over time, and money later. So the first thing we want to do is get that money now filled up, get your house in order, start paying off your primary residence. And that we want to get all that money, get out of debt, pay off your house. That's mainly the bucket one. And then after that, eventually where you want to be is bucket three, where you're focused entirely on money later, right? So it's all about that growth. We raise the income and the value growth. So that's what we're going to call this growth. Now, all the plays we talk about are based on that growth. With small businesses, this is going to be 50 to 300%. Generally, that's what you want to have. You want to be able to grow a small business really quickly by 50 to 300% immediately, at least. And you keep going through a GXM. You just volunteer to work with companies until you can do this easily, until you become really versed with this. Business building is the skill that will open doors for you forever. The one thing that creates social mobility and income ascension. Remember, I always talk about the Terman study, about the single biggest indicator, even with ultra high IQs, even sensationally high IQs, they ended up, the biggest indicator of where they're going to end up in life is where their parents were. Almost nobody ever outperforms what their parents are. They never create a generational shift or a generational step up. Almost never happens. Even in America, even today, you can go back centuries and that's basically the way it is, going back even centuries. So business building is that skill. It's the number one skill that we want to develop. Like when we talk about dialogue and compliance dialogue, the whole point of that stuff, it's like somebody said, everything you want is on the other side of that phone. And I love that line. Someone's like, well, you said it. It's like, I didn't know I said that, but that's exactly right. You got to get your dialogue down. This skill, business building, the ability to grow a business, that's all we're talking about here. If you want to buy a company, it comes down to how well you can build it, how well you can grow that business. And when you can do that, you are always the one who's in control. Everybody that writes the checks has to come to you. And the best place to be in any negotiation is because there's other things too, like what if weird stuff happens sometimes. We're going to talk about some of that a little bit later, but the number one thing to be is to be the business builder, because when you're that person, you're always ready to walk away. Everybody needs you. You kind of, you don't need any of them. So you get to choose where you want to be. So it's not like you kind of need them. You don't need any of them because you can always have as many deals as you want. This skill will transfer and make you a better employee. It'll make you a better student. You'll always come out on top if you understand business building, the core essential building block of everything else, because you start to have appreciation and understand how our economy works, how capitalism works, how opportunity works, how income ascension, social mobility. All these are skills you learn when you learn business building, and you become just a better, more productive, and more socially aware, and just a better person all around when it comes to what you can contribute to society, and just the forwarding of mankind in general. Okay, so here's an example here. Let's take a growth of a business. Let's say this is Bob's business, and this is before and after. So we're going to say that this was at least 30 to 50% growth, at least, right? This is the important part. We call this the growth. We're not going to get into how you grow that business, because that's all my stuff. Go to bigria.com. All we talk about is how to grow businesses and how to grow companies. Everything we talk about. But there's some very basic things you can do to grow that business. So we go through a GXM. We just volunteer to grow our companies, and we do this again and again. We become very, very versed and we're very sharpshooting when it comes to what to focus on and to grow these businesses. So it's very simple to do that. But this is all we're doing. We're growing that business by 30 to 50%. And the question is, what do we do with that? So if the business was $1 million and now it's worth $1.3 or $1.5 million, and like I said, you should know how that's calculated. We know usually you can just look up a business if you don't know the multiplier, but as you get better, you'll be able to tell just by looking at a business what the multiplier is. On average, with small businesses in America, it's going to be about 3 to 5, meaning it's like when you look at a cap rate, the cap rate tells you if you paid cash for that property, for like an apartment building, how much you would get back every year. So if it's a cap rate of 10%, you get back 10%. You pay $1 million, the cap rate is 10%. That means you're going to get $100,000 a year, right? So with businesses, usually if you paid cash, you should get all your money back within 2 to 3 to 5 years. That's how generally all small business in America works. That's the range that we're at. For most companies. So we know that if a business is $1 million and we grow it by 50%, now it's worth 1.5 million. The question is, what do you do now, right? And how we grow it by 500,000, let's say that the multiplier is 10%. That means that for every dollar you grow, there's a 10x improvement in the value of the business. But like I just said, it's usually going to be about 3 to 5. So for every $100,000 a year that business makes extra, it's actually you're adding like 3 to 500,000 to the value. You get what I'm saying? Those numbers, it's not important that we go over. It's just important you know how they work. It's not important that you know exactly what they are right now. But the idea is we grow a business by at least 30 to 50%. You want to do it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, just as a GXM, just as volunteering, helping the businesses, helping your local communities grow, and then you can start putting these deals together because you'll have this pretty easy. So now that we know that growth is our focus, like you see how the big Rhea Phoenix, you guys seen that? Whenever you see a business, ask yourself these 3 questions. How do they get the phone to ring? How do they turn the calls into clients? How do they turn those clients into fans? This is brilliant. Did you put that down from we went over this before in another class. This is great. This is exactly right. This is exactly how we look at companies. This is if we want to look at so are we getting into the growing stuff? I thought we weren't going to talk about that, but okay. Yeah, so this is basically that. When we look at how to grow a business, when you start looking at companies, we want to start seeing opportunities everywhere. And these are questions to start asking. How are they getting the phone ring? Are they doing this predictably? Are they doing this reliably? Do they have a detailed set of protocol and behaviors that are doing these things? And then how well are they nurturing their people? They're usually doing a very terrible job. The worse of a job people are doing and still making money, the more opportunity you see because the more room there is for a secret weapon. All right, understand the 5 crowds principle. So we are getting into the growth stuff. Okay, this is a basic thing for any business. If you can understand this process and you put this in place and help a company do this, not only COVID taught us this, if nothing else, that all the business really is just the people that you do business with. And most people only have one way of making money with them. And if that way gets taken away, they're basically out of business. So what we want to do is understand this. So first you have strangers on one side and your fan base on the other, 77. These are people who are on a scale of 1 to 10. You like them a 7 and you're likely to make money with them a 7. These are your diehard core people. So the question is, for every business that you'll ever work with, this is the question. How do they take, most people are strangers. More people don't know about the business in the world than do, right? So strangers is the biggest group of people and the smallest group of people for that business is going to be their diehard fan base. So how do we move people in between these? Number 1 is we turn someone from a stranger to not a stranger, a potential lead. And people really screw this up. They don't have solid, if just think of a business, ask yourself, how well are they doing this? And do they understand that the hurdle there has to be pretty low? The bar has to be pretty low. When people say, for example, anytime you see a car advertised with the price and there's so many things and next time you see an ad or any kind of marketing, ask yourself, how much are they assuming? How high is that bar? Usually it's a specific car, the car that they don't have any reason to know that person wants. You also have the price. They've got a bunch of stuff there that they're all turnoffs, right? The first thing is they're not nurturing somebody from a stranger to not a stranger. Like, the 3, best ways to make sure you don't get ripped off at a car dealership, for example. That's a better way to turn someone from a stranger to not a stranger. So first we have strangers. That's our first crowd. Then we have not strangers, a potential lead. Then we have a lead, a potential client. This is somebody, first, they're not a stranger. Then they've raised their hand. They might be a potential client, somebody you work with. Then they become an actual client. This is where we actually have a transaction when they turn from a lead and a potential client to a client, and then we turn them into our fan base. So the more choreographed and the more defined this process is for a business you work with, first of all, nobody does this stuff. Even people who have hired us to help them get this stuff going. One of the easiest deals that Anna's doing right now is, realtors are paying her to come in and teach their brokers, or brokers are paying her to come in and teach these to their realtors. And that's a good lead generator for you to then work with them because they're not going to do this stuff. Just ask yourself, how many people that you've given money to do you feel like really care about you, that you're in their fan base? Like they really care about you. They got to know you. They understand your challenges. They really care about you. It almost never happens, right? So we want to have, each stage has its own maturity process, from strangers to not strangers. We want to have Wendy charts, diagrams, very detailed. Basically, this comes down to 3 things. It's our charts, diagrams, our charts, checklists, and scripts. Every business comes down to scripts, checklists, and our charts, right? And you should know the story of why we don't call them the F word, FLOW. We call them Wendy charts. If you don't know that story, you can ask us. You should know that story. You guys don't know that story, right? So I call them Wendy charts. Diagrams, basically. You show me what your diagram is. You show me what your checklist is from turning people from strangers to not strangers and how that's done and what happens at each level of maturity. You show me what you're doing for people that are not strangers to turn them into potential leads. You show them how you take potential leads to transactions. Show me how you take a transaction, someone you've worked with, and turn them into your fan base. How well choreographed, how well defined, how well documented is that process? That's the health of the business. All we need to do is help a business do any one of these, right? Because most people say we need more leads, right? But they're not really understanding that they want to have a potential lead first. They need to, build that audience first. And any one of these can double, triple, hectuple a business immediately. So this is like the core foundation of everything we use. It's really easy stuff. So that's the growth part. Now, how do you make money? The passive income pyramid, this was covered in a few sessions. Basically, at the very bottom bottom here, we have transaction agreements. The core thing that we do with any business is a GXM. This is how many people here have an active GXM that they could convert to at least 10 grand a month right now? Okay, we need to improve that. 5 grand a month. Okay, a couple, 3 grand a month. Everybody should be at 3 grand a month. Okay, basically a GXM, if you're not at 3 grand a month, we can go over that, what makes that clear. Basically a GXM, you're just volunteering. Goodwill experiments model, the great experiments model. Basically we're tracking karma. It's like possibly the greatest experiment ever done. If you just went out and helped people, well, what result would that have? You should give unconditionally. This is just an experiment on if you did it conditionally, what would happen in your life. It's kind of a big experiment we've been doing. So at the very bottom here, we have a transaction agreement. This is, let's say you work with a car dealer, and if you sell a car, or if somebody buys a car that came from you, you get X amount. That transaction, you get a transaction, you get agreement. You get paid per sale per transaction. Then you have residuals. You're getting paid for previous work and transactions. Royalties, the difference is you're getting paid for new transactions, like if you introduce a marketing campaign or something like that, or a process on how they turn people from leads to clients, right? We refine that and then we rent it out. Basically, licensing just means we're renting Brilliance out. License agreements is the next one up here. We rent Brilliant out for both parties, for both residuals and royalties. And then the highest threshold, this is what we're talking about today. We're not going to talk about those other things because that's okay to get started, but the highest threshold is equity and dividends. This is why you're not rich, because you don't own enough shit. You don't control enough shit, right? And this is the first thing to realize is that you got to change that we could start with the transaction agreement just to get our first 10 to 30 grand a month going and get that in the first money bucket. The first money bucket has to be at 10 to 30 grand, right? Get that one, 10 to 30 grand, pay off our debt, pay off our house, right? We go through our income ascension process. We get our foundation, then our fence, then our fortress, right? But the equity and dividends, this is the very top of where we need to be. So it's not about whether it's real estate. The main reason we get into real estate stuff is that you understand the business building. What the hell was that? Did you just throw that up at the wall? Okay. We have you get into the real estate so that you kind of use it as to sharpen your blade and get your business skill up. And then you use that business skill to grow businesses and start getting equity and dividends. Equity with equity, we have two things. It's going to be productive or liquid. I don't know if we're going to talk about that today. Is that in here? All three money buckets: money now, money over time, money later. So this is the entire map. Everything we do, all of our heroes. We've got thousands of success stories, right? We've bought and sold. We buy, sell, fix, trade, and grow. I don't know, over 3,000 companies, like 20 countries, right? This is essentially the framework that we've used for everything. This is where you want to be. The highest point that you want to be at. What creates generational wealth, what creates income ascension, social mobility is equity and dividends. You tell me what your equity position is in companies, businesses, your overall, and how productive and liquid that money is, and the dividends you're getting on that, and that determines everything, right? That the richest people in the world, this is what they have and what everyone else doesn't have, right? And we can talk all we want about, a lot of people have got a lot to say about that, that inequality, and that it's more now than it was even in the Bronze Age, like all kinds of crazy stuff. That's true, but we can bellyache about it, or you can fix it. And to fix it, this is how you fix it. 17 ways to buy a business that makes you 10 grand a month, or 15 ways, right, with the bonus way. Okay, so zero down without loans. So this is, we'll use the example of Bob, who has whatever type of business. Did we pick a business? Okay. You've helped him reach growth of Y. So whatever growth that was, 30 to 50%, right? Now we have equity secure. So if we are working with Bob, the question is, you took his business from 1 million to 1.5 million, or 1.3 million to 1.7 million. And we've talked about how you can determine that, right? If you helped him just in one lead generation campaign, one business doubler, whatever. Now that business is 1 million to 1.3, 1.5, right? The question is, now what? What do we do now? So first, we're assuming now that you're past the GXM phase. We're actually going to make money on this deal. Whenever you have that equity, we want to look at, there's basically like, if you own 500,000 of some, ice cream shop down the street, what does that really mean, right? The liquidity is how much somebody's going to pay you for it. How likely is it that you'll get that 500 grand? And the productive is what's your ROI on that? How much money are you actually making? And if you're not getting if you're not getting dividends, if you're not getting part of, which is often the case, right? Because if a guy owns an ice cream shop and he owns 100% of that business, he's not getting paid dividends himself. So, he's like, how are you getting dividends? That's why sometimes we have a separate transaction agreement. We're at the bottom of the pyramid, but on top of that, we also have equity. But our equity is going to be secured one of three ways. Number one, it's going to be on the actual business. So if we own, let's say, we're going to talk about the ways in a second, right? So we can secure our equity by the actual business. That's the least secure because the business is kind of shaky. Then we can have actual real assets, like maybe they have a fleet of vehicles, or maybe they have some trucks or something like that we can secure it on. And the third one is we actually have like real assets, like real estate or something like that your equity is secured on. That's what we really want. And there was a deal we were talking about earlier, $500,000 equity with an orthodontist group, and they own the real estate. They have access to the real estate, but that real estate's only making like $1,000 a month. But still, that comes out to like 12 grand. It's making like 12 grand a year, about $1,000 a month. Only they get it like every 6 months. So that is not very productive. If you're only making 12 grand on 500,000 equity, that's not productive. What does that tell you? That 500,000 is not real. It's not that liquid. No one's going to pay 500 grand to get 12,000. But when you know these numbers, right? When you know these sliding scales, scales, you can kind of adjust and say, you know what, the 500,000 really isn't secure, but I'm getting $1,000 a month passive, so it's fine for now. You guys get what I'm saying? Everything I said makes sense, right? Just go ahead and if you have anything, just, yeah, don't worry if you have something that we haven't covered. We're going to use an example of, okay, so with all these plays, we use leverage, and then we leverage that growth, right? The growth that we just talked about, the 30 to 50%. The numbers, the industry won't matter, as we can adjust them later. Remember, we build the plane as we take off. You want to be both productive and liquid. So the whole thing here, the whole game, when I talk about equity, whether, you know, that getting the dividends, the whole game here is how much equity you have, how liquid, how solid that is. If you have $500,000 worth of Apple stock versus $500,000 in an ice cream shop down the street, obviously the Apple stock is more liquid. It's like a much more like hyper hungry market, right? So that money is more protected. But what we were saying earlier, like even if it's only $100,000 in equity, and even if you're only making a few $100s a month, yes, it's not as productive as we want it to be, right? Because productive is your ROI in that equity, but it's okay because we got the 100 grand. We have a secure business now. We pick our companies in 3 categories. One is a secure blue chip companies, like, you know, safe stuff. And then we pick the stuff that we really like that, that's not, we don't do it in this order, but we can pick like tech companies, like ones that are actually at high growth. So we have low growth, safe, high growth, not so safe. And the third one is just the craziest ones, the ones that you really want to change the world with, that are, you know, generally unlikely to succeed, but oh well, you just swing for the fences every time. Once you have your money buckets filled, you're clear on your money, you're never going to want the money, right? Because you want to keep reinvesting and get more equity. And every tax law, people always talk about taxes and people pay more taxes. Every tax law in America is favored towards equity, people who have a lot of equity. You immediately, you can get through this without getting, you know, having to go through all the nightmare that most people go through. Everyone that's stressed about taxes and gets hit on that, it's because they don't have equity. Okay, the numbers of the industry don't matter. We can adjust them. Remember, we build the planes, we take off productive and liquid. Doesn't matter how productive it is, we can always change that. Doesn't matter how liquid it is, we can always change that. Just get your first deal going and that'll be good. Land, real estate, business, we just talked about that, about how your equity is secured. Ideally, you want it to be in the land or the real estate, but it might be the business or it might be the assets, like a fleet of vehicles. The business is the weakest. If you have a fleet of vehicles, again, if you have $150,000 in like a landscaping company and it's secured by vehicles, we're like, how likely is it you're really going to get that? And you would have to like liquidate the business, right? Not the best relationship builder, right? So the whole point here is that we get this started and then we calibrate with Bob, our business owner, and we determine the quality of the equity as we move forward. Makes sense? So all this is to say, we have to understand we're growing the business. We use our models. We do all of our badass stuff, right? We grow that business by 30, 50%. We took his $500,000 business to 700,000, 900,000. We doubled it, tripled it, whatever, right? And now all these plays, what do we do now? So here are the 17 ways, or the 12 ways, or the 14, it was 7 and then 12, right? Oh my goodness, I spoke too early. So it's not 17 ways. There's 19 ways because you added the bonus ones. I see. Good. You got me. Okay. So that's what we want to do. Always have the headline say, and then just go over less. But it'd be better if we put bonus because you got to tell people like, hey, this is a bonus. You got to tell them you're getting a bonus. You're getting more than you bargained for. Is this a list of all of them? Okay. So Bob's $1 million business is now worth 1.5. That's the scenario here. Everyone's totally clear on how you should have multiple ways to do that, right? There's nobody that's unclear on how we can make that happen. We have 1,000 trillion different ways, right? Good. Okay. So now we've got from 1 to 1.5. The question is, how do we do that? So here's a few different ways. Number one is you grow and get a percentage of growth. So basically you get part of that 500,000. The business is worth 500,000 now. You get part of that. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 50%, whatever. Now, if it's, let's say 30%, you're going to own 30%, not of the whole business, but you own 30% of that 500,000, which would be how much? How much? I'm going to start throwing shit at you. How much? Okay. Right. You got it right. Now, grow and get a percentage of the whole business. So you grow it to 1.5 and you get the entire 500,000, right? Or you get part of the 1 million. No, I'm sorry. You grow and get a percentage of the whole business, right? So it would be 1.5. Who put 1 million? I was just getting impressed that you got that last math problem right. So you grow the business from 1 million to 1.5 million. Now it's a $1.5 million business, right? So you own a percentage of the whole business. You own 10 or 20%. This happens, or 30% or whatever, right? But what's happening now is that they understand how much value you bring to the table. They want you involved. So that's number two. Is that clear? This is how we're buying that business. We're acquiring that asset. We're controlling this asset, zero down. No, we grew the business and now we decide with that equity, how liquid and productive we move those levels as we move forward. But at least now we're getting an idea. People say, like, what's the fastest way to make $1 million? And if you ask the average person, they're going to say something crazy, like go out and start, a pet rock or, start Facebook or Google or something like that. This is the fastest way to make $1 million. Fastest way to make $1 million is to go out and make $1 million. Take $1 million business and turn it into a $2 million business, which you can do, by the way, in like one phone call. We've been saying this for years and nobody does this except us. But if you just talk to a business and say, hey, who would double your business? Make a list of those 3 to 5 people. What have you done to get in touch with those people? You will never, ever, ever in a million trillion years meet anyone who's doing anything to get in touch with these people. So the only way they'll double their business is by accident, right? So if you have $1 million business or a $2 million business and you double that business, or let's say a $3 million business and you don't double it, you just grow it by 30%, you've just made $1 million. It's $1 million of real value you've added out in the world. Now you don't get all of that. And it's not like a Scrooge McDuck vault that you get, but you've created $1 million and you get some of that, right? Or you could get, if it's a $10 million business, you grow it by 30%, 40%, you could get well over $1 million. And you could do it at the drop of a hat. Now, the question is, who's going to pay you $1 million on a business you just grew like a week ago or last week? That is where we come down to why we use our propaganda package, why we make sure people understand, hey, this is what we do. We grow companies. We grow companies. We make them grow like crack, man. Or we make the business look it's on crack or like it's on steroids. It's not. Stop. Don't talk about crack. That was do as I say, not as I do. But basically, when people know that, they're like, okay, I need to work with those guys. I need to work with them. That's what we need to have. So when a big company comes in and acquires, we want to sit down and talk to them. We don't want to avoid that conversation. We want to say, listen, I've only been here like 2 weeks. Already the business is worth twice as much. Imagine what I can do in 1 year. And then we get contracts with that larger company as well. But the thing is, this is how you get, if you want to make $1 million, go out and make $1 million. Make other people $1 million. This is what we do with the GXM. And you quickly understand, this is how, when you understand income and how it relates to value and equity, this is how we really start producing money out of nothing. You do what the Fed does. You're able to create money out of nothing. Okay, so number 3 is you grow and you get a percentage of that whole business, right? Or that was number 2. Number 3 is you grow and you assign an option. So you go to that business, it's 1.5, that's a $1 million business. You write an option on it for $1 million. It's for sale for $1 million, or it's not, maybe it's not for sale. One of the questions we always ask any business owner is, hey, if you were to sell your business right now, what would be a dream price for you? Or if you were to trade your business for shares in another business, how many shares would you want? Would you trade if Apple wanted to buy your business, but they want to give you shares instead, how many shares would you want? Something like that. But so the business doesn't have to be for sale is my point. But we write an offer on that property or an offer on that business for $1 million. This is what, like in real estate, if you go and you write an offer on a $100,000 property, I'm sorry, I haven't even been looking at you guys. It's because that light. But if a property has $100,000, right? And you go and you write an offer for $100,000, what can you do in the next, few days or weeks or the next year to take that business and make it, or to take that property and make it worth $200,000? Not much, unless it's like in a high appreciated area, right? So you really have limited control. In this case, you have infinite control, right? So you could take write an offer on that business for $1 million, grow it to 1.5, and now you have an option to buy a $1.5 million business for $1 million. You see what I'm saying? That option has value. So we have a few things we can do. We can just assign it for a quick $100,000. We can assign it or get, there's a few other options here, but one is that what we're doing right now is you just assign it. So you have an option. I'm saying, look, this business is worth 1.5. Here's my option to buy it for $1 million. You pay me $100,000 and you get the option yourself. Number 4, you use growth as leverage to buy. So that $500,000, now you use that as your down payment to buy the entire business. We don't do this very often because we might as well keep the owner, the people involved. But it's a very easy way. If you don't have enough money for the down payment, create that down payment by growing that business. Number 5, start a new business that grows, that new business that keeps growing it. So we can start a new business so there's a few ways to do this. I don't know exactly which one you're talking about. You're talking about the third party. So we start, let's say we have business 1, that's an ice cream shop that was $1 million, now it's $1.5 million. We'd start a new business, a third, this would be a second business, right? And that business just keeps growing that first business. Now, are we going to talk about this? There's a few reasons we do that, because now whenever we have an equity stake, your company is basically what's going to own that business. So the business is going to look like, let's say you own 20% of that business. Your business now, the one you started, owns 20% of that ice cream shop. That's what you mean? And that way the money is coming to you from another company. And you're doing this to avoid drama later on, because then we can put another layer of protection as well in case that business gets in trouble. But you start a new business that basically just grows that business. Number 6 is combine companies. Find similar businesses and do the same thing. This is one of the easiest ways to produce a lot of money. We were talking earlier with the funeral. One of the first guys I worked with used to buy funeral homes for $1 million, $3 million. He'd buy them, combine them, and then he'd assign them for $5, $10, $15 million. So he was able to double, triple his money quickly. Combining companies. Take companies that with economies of scale, you can produce that product. You can go to the 5 crowds a lot cheaper by combining companies. So take not just one ice cream shop, but another ice cream shop, or another one is to go linear. Who else supplies the ice cream shop? Look at suppliers or vendors or other people and start buying from the source, from the cow to the ice cream. Start buying the farm, start buying everyone in between, because it's all the same thing. You're just finding similar companies or companies along the supply chain, and you're doing the exact same thing. Number 7, license a model. Take a model and generate residuals, royalties, and then eventually with equity. This is one of the easiest, simplest ways. This is what all of our stuff is broken into models. Basically, it's a checklist that creates a 10 to 30 grand a month predictable result. When you work with a company and you license a model, you can do this for that transaction agreement. And like I said, this is how we make sure we're making our 10 to 30 grand a month. So if we get $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in a business, maybe that's not going to be as productive. Maybe we're not getting a preferred return. Maybe we're not getting the dividends we want. But that's why we can always go back, license a model out, and create that income we want. And maybe we just want to do that with that business because we don't want to be too involved or we don't see as much of a future. But licensing a model is simple, it's brilliant, it's an easy way to basically have hands-off residuals, royalties, and then to actually turn that into equity. Number 8, a third company that owns 2 others, a business that owns second layers. Is that what you're talking about? The layering? So this is what I thought you were talking about a second ago. So basically you have the main ice cream shop or whatever. That's 1 million. Now it's 1.5 million, right? You start a second business that owns part of that first business, but then we also start another business that does nothing but take the same exact models, the same exact policies, or the same exact how we grew that first business, and all we're doing is picking up other ice cream shops or other whatever. Now you're creating layers of protection so that if one business goes down, you're not going to be in trouble, or if they make a bad decision. You've got layers of protection, and you've also got the same exact thing going on multiple times. Self-similarity, the same relationship. You asked me about that earlier. Was that you or so? Right. So like the way that the electrons circle the nucleus, the way that the Earth orbits the sun, the way the sun orbits within our galaxy. That's what we're talking about. The same relationship at different levels. The way you grew that one business is the way you're going two businesses, the way you're going five, and it's the way that your company that just grows companies. It's the same thing it's doing. So that's how we create that self-similarity. We're taking that same skill sets. Like I said, the core of all this is growing. We get that underway and we're fine. Third company that owns two other companies. 9, consulting company helps others take practices and growth to others. So this is what I did when we were doing the hire yourself stuff. I used to work with a group of people that used to say, listen, if you have there'd be a lot of guys that had like $200,000-$300,000 a year jobs, and they would get, we had a headhunting business years ago. We still do, but I was more involved with it. And so I'd work with them. I'd say, you know what, instead of trying to find a job, why don't you go buy a business? You have money in your 401k, buy a business with, the way the SDE works, you'd probably get your money back in 2 to 3 years. Buy a business, hire yourself, and you can do it that way. It didn't work out so well because a lot of those guys just hated being in business. But one of the things you can do is once you have one model going, you've grown one business, your company can just be a consulting company that works with other companies. So it's like the number 8, except you don't have those layers of protection. Basically, your business now consults and works with other ice cream shops, gets them from 1 million to 1.5 million. And when you can speak like that, I'm looking for ice cream shops in the Midwest that are at $1 million or $2 million because I specialize in getting them to 5 million. When you can speak like that, business brokers, everybody loves you because it's like a hook. With that specificity, you have a solid hook. And now you have a company that consults other companies, works with them, and gets equity in these other companies. So you're picking up 5, 10, 15, 20 different companies. We have multiple heroes that are doing this right now because it's really easy to do, especially with the lender agent model. 10, trade previous equity. Roll other deals into buying or taking over that other $1 million. You're not going to do this with $1 million. Usually it's going to be a $5 or $10 million deal. But if you have like a $10 million business you want to buy, one of the easiest ways to do that is start with $1 million business, get some equity in that business, especially one related to that industry, and then roll your previously, I've got, 5, 6, 7 different companies. So we started, what was it, the hero who had, we are now building the largest 1 million inner city business owners or whatever. That's one of our sister special needs projects. And one of our most successful students there, one of our heroes there, he started with his barber school. He just went to his barber shop and said, look, I'm going to help you grow your business, putting out signs. He ended up it became a disagreement. So his equity was not productive or liquid, let's just say. But he got in touch with another barber shop and he said, you know what, let me try helping you. And that guy put him in touch with a barber school now where he's going to be getting shares in this barber college. It's a haircutting college now. And that's where his equity play is going to be. It's beautiful. I love it. But he's going to be able to essentially work with these other smaller schools, take those little smaller chunks of equity and roll that into that larger one, which is one of the largest barber colleges in America. So it's really a cool deal, man. I really like that stuff. So trade previous equity. Take these little deals that you have, roll them up. Number 11, group equity. So take a business that owns pieces of many companies. This is what you're talking about. We're one that same company. So we're taking that equity and trading it. So you take that same thing with that one business, getting 100,000 here, 200,000 here, and you're rolling it up. And that one company just does nothing else but takes that equity to trade for other companies. Is that what you meant? Okay. So 12 is JSON equity. This is basically when you take companies that pick up other companies that are related to that main company. So it's like ice cream shop or whatever. And that those companies are using other companies. Equity for group. This thing, we're running out of our time here. Okay. All right. Okay. We got to hurry up here. Equity for a group. Basically take a group. I'm going to finish this in the next 60, 90 seconds. Take equity that you have for a group, right? So we want to work with the volunteer groups. We want to take one of our fastest ways to get the best thing you can do for any volunteer group, any organization. Start volunteering. Go out and volunteer for some group, at least an hour a week. The best thing you can do for these groups is get them equity in businesses. Start saying, hey, when a business wants to donate, when I talk to business owners, I can get them to want to donate a piece of their business to this group. And how would that work? Ask them about that. Number 14, finance growth. You can pay them off and grow. We're talking about finance growth. You're talking about, okay, so if you take $1 million business, so you're taking 1.5, they can refinance that now. So let's say they want $1 million to sell their business. Well, they can't refinance it to get that million out, but now it's worth 1.5 million. They can refinance it just like with real estate. Okay. Does that all make sense? Is that good? All right. Thanks so much, guys. BigRia.com. Go there now.